So in order to create more realistic lighting, we're going to use a system in 3D Studio Max over here. So under your create panel, instead of going for a standard object, right on this very far side where you find biped and things like that, we've got a daylight system, which all of you guys are doing outdoor scenes, so it was the perfect one to use. As soon as you click on it, you get this little dialog box pop up. It's just saying that it's going to add exposure control because we're going to play around with a realistic sun, essentially. So click on yes, zoom out slightly, click and drag, and it will put in a compass for you. Let go, drag again, and it will give you the height of where the sun is. And then click again, and you're done. First thing to do straight away, it works based on being able to change like the hours in the day, and it will move the sun around based on that. It can get a little tricky getting it to be where you want it to, and for the sake of just showing your scene, just switch it to manual, and then you can use your standard controls to move it around. Turn off. So manual, and then you can move it around. Okay. Next thing, just change your viewport from standard to high quality so it takes into account the lights. You can see the shadows there, and it's being affected by wherever this guy is. And then we need to add in a Skydome. So first thing that you're going to need is to go online and search for here HDRI textures in Google, and you'll find a whole list of them. They all look like this. They're basically 360 video shots that have been compressed into one file. So pick one that you like, one that's going to go with your scenes, or if you're doing a more sort of evening scene, then grab a different one. I took this one, and it's the one that's on the classroom for you here if you want to just use the one I'm using. Okay, so back in Max, next thing we want to do is go into our material editor, and then we also want our environment open as well. So material editor M on the keyboard, environment is 8 on the keyboard. So between these two, we're going to create this skybox. Okay, so first thing, in here we want to change our standard setup. We want to bring in that sorry, wrong one. We want to bring in our slot into here, picture of the skybox. So we'll go in and grab it in a bitmap. There it is, open. Okay. One thing I've just forgotten to mention, go press F10 on the keyboard. You need to make sure that we're using mental ray in the renderer, and that's because here on our sun, instead of saying standard, we're going to change that to say mental ray sun, so Mr. Sun, on both of those, so both the skylight and the sunlight. Click OK on both of those. Then you'll notice in here this changes automatically, updates as soon as you change these. It changes your environment map. And then in here we need to make sure we're rendering our production set to mental ray as well. Okay. Then you can change your size, so we'll do something close to HD. 900 450 will do. Okay. Then we're going to grab this environment map here and drag it into our material editor. Okay. Make sure it's an instance. And then here where it says use custom map, we're going to use this one here. So instead of dragging that one, I'll just retake it from here. So instead of none, I'm going to go and get a bitmap of our sky. Okay. Then we're going to come up the stack here and then drag that sky into this slot here. It's just so that we can see it and play around with parameters. We can change its tiling and its offset. At this point, we need to be able to see what it's doing inside the scene. So looking in here, right click down in this area at the bottom, this bottom section, and you'll get this menu pop up. And the first one should be display performance. But here, background, tell it to use the environment background, apply to the active viewport, and OK. All right. Finally, we want to drag this guy back into here as an instance, and then you'll see it arrives in your viewport. So now we can see it around. At the moment, it's working as a screen. So you can see it says screen here. So it's basically just, if I zoom out, it's just repeating the same texture around it. We need to change this area here that says screen to spherical environment. And then you've got the map is running all the way around. So you've created a skybox essentially. So at the moment, it's a little bit stretched. This is why we threw it into here so that we can change these tiling setups. So the first thing, we want it to mirror up and down. So I'm going to click on this bottom mirror there. So you can see here that whatever's at the bottom is mirrored at the top. So that squashes it slightly for us. Then we want to change our tiling and our offset. So between, you can play around with these because different skies will have a different outcome inside here. But the more you kind of move these around, you can see the more we're moving the sky around. And then the more tiling that you've got is whether it's going to tile more or less, obviously. So I'm going to leave this one on -1, and then I'm going to bring this up to 0.5, halfway, so you can see it's halfway between. And then we can look around and we've got sort of sun over there and then a sky above it. Okay. So that's that done, and that's this done as well. Last few little parameters that you've got in here, and you can leave them for you to play around with, and you get the sort of the look that you want. You can change the amount of shadow, whether it's got a soft shadow that bleeds off towards the end, or whether you want it on more of a harder shadow. So the lower that number is, the harder the shadow is. Higher number, the more soft it is. And then further down, you've got your, here's your sky parameters, and the multiplier there is based on how bright it is. So the higher that number is, the brighter it's going to be, and the lower that number is, the darker it's going to be. Okay, that's essentially it. As soon as you hit Shift and Q, then it will render that, and it's using the mental ray renderer, and you'll see that it gives it a much more realistic look, sort of like a more of a sun look to it. And it's also given us the ability to have a Skydome, so you can look all the way around it. This is the main thing. This is what is giving you the tick on the marking scheme. So as long as you've placed that in place, then you're all good to go. Okay, that's it.